Welcome to the Golf Fitness Bomb Squad. I'm your host, Chris Finn, and today we are going to be talking about the U.S. Open because it's coming to Pinehurst. And now, typically, this is I guess I would say I'm breaking podcast rule 101 of timestamping this, but it's coming to my backyard here. When obviously, Pinehurst Golf is in Raleigh. It's coming to Pinehurst, so it's literally maybe an hour down the road. Depending how fast you drive down Route 1, probably less. But it's kind of a cool time because we had obviously there's U.S. Open. The longest day in golf is obviously the Monday 2 weeks prior to the Open. So we actually had a lot of guys that were playing in it. So Tuesday after, one of the final qualifying sites is here in the Raleigh-Durham Triangle area at Duke University. So we had a bunch of the guys kind of show up Tuesday morning. And I wanted to give some insight in terms of what it's like for these guys, because this is getting. I think this is released Friday, so they'll be at the Memorial. Then they have the U.S. Open the following week. Like, these guys are on a grind in the middle of their season. The season is in full swing, and their bodies are taking a beating. And it's not just from the golf; it's also just the travel, the schedules that they have to uphold, throughout the year. But particularly when you throw in guys who have to go play in the longest day of golf, right? They got to do 36 holes walking in June in North Carolina. It's not chilly. It's humid. It's hot. It's an experience, and these guys' bodies do take a beating. And I wanted to kind of give you some insight in terms of once a pro comes in the middle of the season, like, what do they do physically, right? Because my hope is you can take some learnings from what they do and apply it to you and your game, right? And you may not have the U.S. Open coming up, but you may have a guys trip or maybe a member guest coming up. Maybe you're playing a multiple member guest weekend, and multiple weekends back to back. Right? For some reason, you probably have a period of golf where it will be more dense than what you're used to. And so when we talk about how does your body handle that, there are predictors that you can identify for you yourself to identify when something potentially is going to go wrong. I call it the canary in the coal mine, right? Something that gives us a warning, right? So obviously if it's your first time listening, you may not have heard of what we deem or call it the home assessment. But basically, there's 4 rotary centers that every golfer requires. And what we typically see across the board is every golfer tends to have tendencies of what part of their body tends to tighten first, right? Some people may be more hip, that maybe your hips get tight, you play a lot. Some people, maybe their shoulders. Other people, maybe their spine, right? Like Kyle Berkshire and his World Long Drive Championship, after every 6 balls he hit, after every set, we were retesting his thoracic spine rotation because that's the first thing that would lock down. And if that locked down, then it would lead to oblique stuff happening that was not good. It was that would have re-injured, right? That we had just rehabbed. So as a golfer, it's kind of my mission that every golfer knows what your canary in the coal mine moment is on your body, right? Is it your hip? You do the hip test. Oh, my hip's tight. Something, I need to address that so that everything else doesn't go to crap, right? Is it my shoulder? Whatever it may be. Because if you know what your predictor of something potentially going wrong is, then you can stay on top of it. And the more you know what that is, the sooner you find it, the less time you have to put into it. And B, the sooner you find it, the less likely that it kind of devolves or kind of snowballs into something worse, where now you have multiple areas involved. You can end up with a elbow injury on your trail side because your lead hip locked up. Right? If your lead hip locks up, you're going to clear through the golf swing less. You're going to likely try to compensate by overusing the wrist and flipping, or you're going to try to manipulate something in your trail side arm to compensate for the lead side leg, right? And so then all of a sudden now you have golfer's elbow, and in reality, it's not an elbow problem; it's a hip problem, right? But the number of people that I see that I had an elbow problem, I just went and got injections. Well, cool. What's your other hip look like? And their hip is terrible. It's like, well, that's cool. You got an injection, but your actual problem is in your hip. So you're just going to have to cycle through repeated injection. Hope maybe it gets, hopefully not, but maybe it gets to the point where you had so many elbow issues that they end up wanting to cut you. Right? And nobody ever looks at the hip. Like, so understanding your body, number one, gives you power and it empowers you to understand where your potential limitations are. Once you've identified where your current limitations are, you work to improve them. Then the next step is now you can start to use that assessment to understand, hey, when I play a lot of golf, what tightens up? Right? You can approach it with curiosity and say, hey, what are the things I need to be worried about to play this game for a really long time in a healthy way, where I'm not hurting, where I can swing it faster. That certainly makes the game a little bit more fun, but I can not only swing it faster, but do it without, with knowing that I'm not going to hurt myself, without that concern for injury. So when these guys and girls come in after, 36 holes on a qualifier, or they're in a hot stretch of their season, literally that's the first thing we do is we say, hey, let's check all your mobility numbers. Cool. Let's check your, we'll even check vertical leaps on people to see how fatigued their nervous system is, right? If your normal vertical leap is 20 inches, when your nervous system's tired, which it's where it gets to at this point of the season for a lot of players, they may only jump 18 inches, right? Or 17 inches, right? Depending on how fatigued they are, right? That gives you insight in terms of, hey, we really probably should be using more, rate of perceived exertion metric for how much you're lifting, RPE for short, as opposed to, hey, lift 90% of what your max was, a month ago. Because if if maybe that number was 200 pounds when you're fresh, when you're fatigued, that number may be 170 pounds, right? And you'll still get the same, response, but we won't be pushing so high that we're looking at potential injury likelihood. So this can go way into the weeds. I don't want to get too deep. I just wanted to give people a sense of, hey, what are these guys and girls doing at this time of year? It was it's fun for us just having all of them around. Usually we're having to try to deal remotely with people all over the country and, the world, the girls when they're over in the Asia swing. Like, it's fun when people can kind of, in a sense, come home, right? We can see them in person, put our hands on them. But the process of what we do doesn't change if they're remote or if they're here in person. We're always looking for those markers. The goal with every pro that we have is that they understand what their personal markers are. And when they're on the road, they're having the people on the trailer check them, right? So as amateurs, we can do the same things. And that's the really cool thing about, I think one of the cool things about golf is, as amateurs, we can play the same courses as the pros. The other cool thing is we can also take care of our bodies like the pros do. So hopefully that kind of sheds some light in terms of what they're doing. Hopefully you found that a little bit interesting. This is a fun time of year for us, having everybody come into obviously to the Raleigh area here. And it's just fun to be able to share some of the kind of behind the scenes stuff with you, because you should know it's interesting stuff, and anything that they're doing to help them, 100% you should be looking at how can I arbitrage that information and use that to help myself. So thanks as always for hanging out with me here on the Bomb Squad, and we will catch you on the next episode.